Good morning and happy Sabbath, everybody. I hope that you've had a blessed week thus far. It's a privilege, a blessing to be able to come back and study with you all. Um, so, what I hope to go through today, I hope will at least give my perspective to some of the questions that you've asked. However, the topic that I want to go through is, we'll say, a work in progress. And so, as we go through each of the different steps, I'm going to ask that you participate. I know that sometimes it can feel intimidating to ask questions, but at least for me, it's really important that as we go along, if something doesn't make sense, you stop me and ask about it. Because we could get to the end and I say something and you ask, how did we even get here? So there'll be a lot of themes discussed. So yeah, I ask that you go with me as we study together. So the topic that I want to go through is the distinction between the sixth and the seventh kingdom. What makes them different and what makes them the same. And hopefully, perhaps not in the study, but hopefully at some point, seeing that distinction will shed even more light as to identifying when the Sunday law is and why that specific date can be the only date of where the Sunday law takes place. And more importantly, why it's important going forward in our studies. So I want to start with establishing definitions. To make sure we're all on the same page. You should all be familiar with the definitions that at least myself and other teachers are using. So I don't want to spend too much time trying to prove why these definitions are what they are. But at the end, if we have time for a Q&A, maybe we can go through that together. So At least how I've understood and defined the symbol of the woman in Revelation 17 is as an entity with an ideology. Put more simply, it's something that has ideas, it has a worldview. Just at that generic level without describing what that ideology is or who that entity is. This woman has an agenda, has a goal in mind, which is to spread their ideas to the world. To accomplish that, this woman is going to go around looking for a kingdom. In Revelation 17, it uses the symbol of head. And if we ask ourselves, what does the woman want that she doesn't have? The thing that she doesn't have that she needs is power. It becomes the defining characteristic of the thing that she needs on her side. And so if we think about what has power in the context of controlling people, I hope it is clear to see that the thing that controls people in a society is institutions, but more specifically political institutions. What's helped me clarify what this symbol of the head is all those studies we've done about the personal being political. What that phrase means, as I understand it, is that the personal lives of people in a society are shaped and molded by the political institutions that govern them. That's just a generic way of explaining that. This head needs to have enough power for the woman to accomplish her goals. And if we think about what that institution is, and we take a magnifying glass, it's a badly drawn magnifying glass, but it is one. And we try to investigate which political institution has enough power has enough power after enough investigation, we can see that it's the seat of power that does that job. I've used the symbol of a throne in past studies. Obviously, that's a bit archaic. And so in modern day terms, the presidency. This throne has powers inherent to itself. And when people come together to create that throne, it's created for a specific purpose. It's created to serve. To serve and protect the people, the society. That's what all thrones are created to do. And so they're given power to accomplish that goal. So power in and of itself is not wrong. In fact, it's good when directed in the right direction. So this generic throne that's created is created to serve the people, protect their rights. So this thing that the woman is looking for has to have enough power for it to be relevant to the woman. So if we were to think of a timeline, here's a throne, which we've said is a head, that has power. It's serving the woman. I'm serving the people, sorry. The woman looks and sees that that throne is attractive. And so it needs to convert that throne into something she's going to use. And that's the story of beasts. Once that throne adopts the ideas of the woman, it becomes a beast. Again, I'm not going to prove some of these things for now. I just want to start with a baseline. And so when we define a beast, we can see that it's really just a throne, a head that's been influenced by the woman. So it's a political institution with power that's adopted the ideas of the woman. And that's this transformation that's going on. So when we talk about the Sunday law, we're trying to identify the place where this throne becomes a beast. So we've spoken about a throne and this good throne, which is called a head, And this bad throne that's called a beast. So what we need to try and determine from prophecy, away from all the noise. By noise, I mean political commentary, political commentators, is the woman. What makes the woman bad? Specifically, when we read about that symbol in Revelation 17. If that we can find a symbol that's bad, then we know just by juxtapositioning that this entity with an ideology could be good or it could be bad, depending on the story. So if we think about what a good woman would be, even if you don't see it explicitly in Revelation 17, we could hypothesize what that good woman could be. So what makes that woman good or bad is in relationship to the throne, and whether it fulfills the job function of the throne. So you have this throne that's going to be created to serve the people, and then something is going to come and sit on that throne that will either accomplish that job or not. That job being the service of the people. So if we think about the good woman, the question is their agenda to fulfill the purposes of what that throne was created for? So are they going to use the power that's in their hands, that that throne has? Are they going to use it appropriately? I.e., are they going to use that power that they have in their hands now for the purposes of what that throne was created? And if we think back, that purpose is to serve the people. Keep these definitions in mind, because later we're going to discuss about Donald Trump's first term in office and his second term. So as we build these building blocks at the beginning, we have to keep them in our minds as we build step by step. So if we just say the opposite of good is bad, then we can say that a bad woman would be using the powers of the throne inappropriately, i.e., not for the service of the people. They use those powers to serve themselves. No longer the people. In the past, we would use a term to describe this behavior, which is gadal. If you remember that, stretching your minds way back into the early days. That's essentially lifting yourself up. And the means of by which one lifts themselves up is because now they have enough power to do that. So this story about the bad woman is about abuse of power in self-service. This entity over here is going to get power from that throne. Now they have access to it because they've converted that throne into their agenda. And that power was meant to do what? One purpose and one purpose alone. Serve the people. But they use it for another purpose. It will sound like I'm saying things repetitively, but I'm just trying to say the same thing in different ways so that it makes sense. So, as an example, if we think about Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar is going to get shouted at by God, scolded, and all his grandchildren, children and grandchildren, because those stories demonstrate that all the power that they had was meant to be used to serve the people. Think of that story that Nebuchadnezzar has about the tree and it being shade for all the birds. But God tells him, you've become too big for your boots. And so you need to be humbled. Because now Nebuchadnezzar stopped serving the people and has started serving himself. So it's quite easy to see once you take these definitions and start investigating those kingdoms. So in your own time, you can go to Greece, Medo-Persia, Rome, and see the same story. So that's the woman and the throne. We've spoken about a good woman at a definitional level, A bad woman, a good throne, and a bad throne. One thing that we need to always do in our minds is distinguish between the woman and the throne. Because sometimes they can look so similar that we end up confusing the woman for the throne. And sometimes they're quite easy to see the difference, that it's obvious. So a place where it's obvious that they're different would be the papacy being the woman and the throne being the kings of Europe. So I want to stop here, take a pause, and see if we're all together. Does anyone have any specific questions at this point before we move on? Or does everything make sense so far and everyone's smiling? If I'm going too fast, you have to tell me. Okay, I see thumbs up. So I'll continue unless anyone says anything. So a key distinction in this story about the throne and the woman is that this throne is going to change shape over time. It's going to grow, shrink, expand, contract. Sometimes it's going to look ugly and sometimes it's going to look pretty. The condition of that throne, i.e., how much power it has, everything we define about this throne has to be about the power it has. So that condition may degrade over time, but that degradation has nothing to do with the morality of the woman. Because they're two different symbols. So if we were to think of a person who inherits an ugly looking throne, so a throne that has all the power in the world, it's super powerful, got big muscles. The job of that woman is one thing and one thing only. Use what you have to serve the people. So as we go into the next section, where for me at least, it starts to get complicated. there'll be two stories that we tell. And we can't mix them up. Story 1 is about the throne becoming more powerful. And story 2 is about the throne committing fornication with the woman. They're two different things, as I hope we'll demonstrate. So,
Curtis,
yeah,
j'ai une question, c'est Sophie.
So I have a question.
Dans la première histoire,
In story number 1,
quand tu décris le trône qui a plus de pouvoir,
when you describe that the throne has more power,
ça semble négatif en fin de compte.
when you describe it, it seems as a bad thing.
Est-ce que je comprends bien ou pas?
Do I understand it right?
so let's come back to that. Once I go through the 6th and the 7th kingdom. I just wanted to set the stage, so now when we talk about what we talk about, you know what I'm talking about. So if you hold your question, we'll come back to it just now. If that's okay, Sophie.
Oui, bien sûr.
So let's go into Revelation, because we want to understand the 6th kingdom. I said the goal of my study today is to distinguish between the 6th kingdom and the 7th kingdom. The 6th throne and the 7th throne. Separate to the woman. I say that, but now I'm going to start talking about the woman. Revelation 12 tells a story about a woman but I want to skip over all of that and go to the end of the chapter. So, to paraphrase verse 16, there's a woman who's good that's being persecuted by the papacy. I'm not good at drawing, but here's Europe, and the papacy's been persecuting the woman. And so the woman needs to find safety somewhere. And so she goes on a long journey on a boat that's going to take it to the earth. The verse says, I don't know how it reads in French. That the earth helps the woman. Verse 16, yes. The earth opens up its arms, its mouth, and provides protection for the woman. So a question that arises is, what is this earth? Is it government? Or is it simply the geography that the woman finds refuge in? I'm going to suggest that this earth over here is the same earth in Revelation 13 verse 11, where it says this lamb is going to come up out of the earth. It's going to arise from a specific place in the world. So just at that simple level, we can see that this earth over here is not the government that's made in 1798. It's simply the geography of this piece of land. There's a big enough gap between this earth and where the papacy is, separated by this big ocean. That means that the woman that runs to the earth can be protected from the bad woman in Europe. So who are those people that are fleeing to this land that we call the earth? Ellen White will frame it as the pilgrims. History will use different terms. But something Ellen White and history agree on is that they make this journey long before 1798. In 1620, these pilgrims start fleeing to the earth. So all these people start accumulating in this place. And over time, what do they realize? That they need. Because they go from just being people doing their own thing to being a society. And if you're going to organize people into a society, you need a government. You need a throne. And so they create this throne. And that's the story of 1798. So we can see that the woman that goes to find safety in the earth this good woman ends up creating this kingdom, this throne. And what do they say? that anyone who's going to sit there is going to sit there not because they're a son or a daughter of someone else. They're going to sit there as one of us, of the people. A government by the people, for the people, of the people. So that's the good woman that sits on this throne that they create. But what I said I wanted to discuss was the throne. So, yes?
Français, t'es en français. Why are you making the thrones? Where's the throne starting in 1798? Because we said that the
So,
throne was the seat of power, hence the presidency. And the first president was in 89. But now I understand that the prophetic history starts in 98. But the throne is 89 in history.
so I'm just going to paraphrase Jermaine's question, so to make sure that we all get it. She's saying historically, as a fact, the first throne that we see is here in 1789. So why have I placed it here in 1798? And my answer or perspective is baked into what she said. When I talk about thrones, so the thrones of Revelation 17, the heads, is not when that throne was created, but when did that throne become a kingdom of prophecy? Does that answer you? So this picture work obviously skips through some steps to make a specific point. And the point is that the throne that we see as a kingdom of Bible prophecy in 1798 was created by the good woman that ran away from being persecuted before 1798, as to your point. Who fled from persecution prior to 1798. So what you said reinforces the point that the earth that's protecting the woman is not the kingdom that we read in Revelation 17 or Revelation 13 verse 11. Does that make sense? So
the kingdom that we read of in Revelation 13 and 17 is not what? I didn't understand what you said.
So in Revelation 13 verse 11, it says this lamb is going to come up out of the earth. So without proving it, when do we say that this lamb is rising? (1798). So this lamb only becomes relevant in prophecy in 1798. And it's coming up out of the earth. So the earth is the thing that's protecting the good woman, not the lamb. Yes. Not the lamb. Okay. So when we come to this picture work over here, the point that I'm trying to make is that this good woman that was protected by the earth finds protection long before the lamb starts rising up. Rising up doesn't mean created. Ellen White will say rising up means becoming relevant. Relevant. It's becoming prominent on the world stage. So it was created before 1798. But now it's relevant in 1798. Is that okay?
So why are you emphasizing this difference? Is it because we previously had a different understanding of this? Because I remember that back then we were saying that Constitution was what protected the woman. And since January, February, and now March with you, Elder Terry and yourself really emphasize the fact that it's the land itself, like the piece of land, that protects the woman, not the lamb. Why are you emphasizing that point? Just to show us that there's a difference in understanding?
I can't speak for what was taught in the past, because how I've always understood it, me, is how I've described it now. But I know that other teachers may have taught that it was the Constitution. The point that I want to get from proving that it's the earth that protects the woman is to try and demonstrate that the good woman creates that throne and ends up riding that throne. So we won't see any verses about the good woman on top of a throne riding ahead. But I want to demonstrate that beyond just comparing and contrasting, by saying there's a bad woman, so there must be a good woman. I want to try and demonstrate from Revelation 12 and 13 that that good woman does exist in the context of thrones. Because it's easy for us to get stuck in this symbology of Revelation 12, the application of Revelation 12, and say that the good woman is the church. And what I'm trying to show is that the good woman, in this context of kingdoms, is not the church, it's political entities. Things that ride kingdoms. So making that distinction of what the earth is that's protecting the woman, for me becomes important to demonstrate that the good woman rides ahead at any point.
So this means that the story you're explaining of Revelation 12, verse 7. Verse 16, you're giving a different explanation than Ellen White's. Because Ellen White says that the church of Revelation 12, the woman of Revelation 12 is a church. And she fled to a country that gave her protection and freedom of conscience. And so you're giving us a different vision of history. For us to be able to link it to Revelation 17 and the woman and the throne, right? This political aspect of history.
Exactly. But that's not to say that the perspective that we read about those churches is wrong. It's just one perspective. And as we know, the Millerites and Ellen White, as Elder Tess demonstrated, don't care about politics. All they care about is the church. So that's all that Ellen White is going to see when she reads Revelation 12. But as we've matured as God's people, we've seen that if we're going to understand end time events, then we can't close our eyes to politics and just focus on the church. if we put our bias aside and read Revelation 12 for ourselves to glean another perspective, not contradictory, my suggestion is that history and our application of this symbol, the earth, shows us that the people that create this throne, that go to find protection in the earth, are just ordinary people. Some of them are churchgoers. Some of them are scientists. Some of them are philosophers who are all just tired of the papacy. So out of all these people, the churchgoer, the philosopher, the scientist, who are all tired of the papacy, Ellen White is going to tell one story. But as I've suggested, let's tell the story about humanity, which is all these people. And if we tell the story of humanity separate to their creed, we can demonstrate that this good woman ends up on the throne. Because an immediate question that will come up is, how do you have a good woman, that's the church, on a throne? I thought church and state were never meant to come together. But what I'm trying to demonstrate is that we need to not think about this good woman in the context of a church. We should think about it in the context of people. As I thought our job was as students of prophecy. In trying to understand the great controversy in relationship to everyone. Does that clarify what I'm doing here, Shamin? So if that's the case, in 1798, I'm using that as the prophetic waymark. So obviously that throne was created before. But here's where we mark the sixth kingdom. So when this throne is created, when it's standing here in 1798, the founders, what do they ensure they do when it's created? How do they create that throne? So that it looks different to all the other thrones they've seen in Europe. That's a question. That's an open question. Shemaine touched on it in her question. If you were to think about everything you know about the USA, 1798, what's happening then? What's the form of government that they create? Inspired by French.
Pas démocratie. Je vais dire démocratie, mais c'est pas le mot que je cherche.
République?
Une
I
république.
wanted to say democracy, but it's not exactly the word I was looking for.
You said another word after democracy, I think.
C'est pas moi, c'est Natacha, mais elle a dit république.
Ah.
She said republic. Natasha said republic.
So I heard two words, republic and democracy. If we were to think of democracy, again, that's in the context of the people. So this person that's going to sit on this throne we create needs to be of the people. Which is tied to what someone said about republic. So to the person that said republic, what did they mean by that? What does that mean for a government to be a republic?
En fait, c'est un gouvernement qui... En fait, ce que je comprends, c'est ils ont voulu faire un gouvernement qui était différent de ce qu'ils avaient connu.
What I understand of it is that they tried to set up a government that was different from what was already known.
Avant, c'était les pleins pouvoirs par le chef et notamment par les rois.
Before it was full power owned by the chiefs and the kings.
Et donc là, ils ont fait une forme de gouvernement où le président
And so now they put in place a type of government where the president
n'est pas le seul à détenir le pouvoir.
is not the only one holding the power.
I like the way you express that, because it ties back to what we started our study with. And the fact that a throne, if it's going to do anything, needs power. So these founders, they see, okay, if we're going to create a throne, it needs to have power. But every time a throne has been created in the past, somewhere along the line, things go bad. We, as founders, can't guarantee that a bad person will not sit on this throne that we create. So, in order to prevent that, they do what you just said. They restrain that power. So they create various restraints to limit the power that the throne can actually use. the way it's designed is designed in a way to repel bad women. So that it doesn't look attractive to bad women. It has just enough power to serve the people, but enough of that power is safeguarded that bad people don't lick their lips when they look at that throne. So all those checks and balances and separations of power are what make the sixth kingdom the sixth kingdom. Distinguished from all those 5 ones we saw before. When we combine different stories and narratives from Ellen White, she'll describe this sixth kingdom as a lamb. And I'll just say it as a fact and then we can explore it in our Q&A. This head that we mark in 1798 onwards never becomes a beast. When we talk about the sixth kingdom. The sixth kingdom is born a lamb and it dies a lamb. It's what's unique about it in comparison to all the other kingdoms.
When you say it never becomes a beast, you mean that it never has a bad woman riding it, right? In the context of Revelation 17.
Exactly. So if we go back to our definitions, from Revelation 17, a head is a political institution with power. A beast is a political institution with power that's adopted the woman's ideas. The bad woman's ideas. So what we can add about this head is that it has good woman's ideas. That's what I was trying to demonstrate in that story about the earth. So as Shemaine pointed out, my point is that if this sixth kingdom never becomes a beast in Revelation 17, it points to the fact that a bad woman never sits on that throne. A bad woman looks at it.
J'ai une question.
Says, you're ugly, I'm going to look somewhere else. The throne looks at the bad woman and says, you don't look attractive to me. So these restraints end up creating that barrier between them. And so fornication can never happen between the bad woman and this kingdom. And hence why we don't get a bad woman ever riding the sixth kingdom. Because these restraints, what make the sixth, act as a safety mechanism.
Du coup, j'ai une question.
Someone's got their hand up.
Oui, c'est moi. C'est Natacha.
Vas-y.
Bye, Natasha.
Donc, ma question, c'est que malgré le fait que Trump ait été dans le sixième royaume,
So my question is, despite the fact that Trump was in the Sixth Kingdom,
il doit être quand même, durant cette période, avant la loi du dimanche,
continue ta phrase parce que
être considéré comme une bonne femme.
so it still has to be considered as a good woman up to until the Sunday law.
Et que c'est uniquement le passage de la loi du dimanche où il y a du coup fornication,
And it's only from the Sunday law where there's fornication,
et donc la loi du dimanche,
and so the Sunday law,
que là, il devient vraiment une tête, une bête.
that he really becomes a beast.
So we'll build up to that. I just wanted to start at the beginning. If we were to think of how to prove a point or make a point, logic has to build sequentially. So you start with a premise and you determine whether it's true or false. And if we determine that it's true, then the next premise we make has to be in agreement with the previous one. So I want to start with acknowledging that the sixth kingdom never becomes a beast. It's unique. It never has a bad woman riding it. And we have to determine whether that premise is true or false before we move on. So we can pick up in our next study after the break. As we build up to trying to answer Natasha's question. So I'll close now with a word of prayer. But before I do that, I want to give a 2-minute summary of what we've discussed. The study is about the sixth and the seventh kingdom. And the transition between the two. So to explain that, we need to understand these symbols in Revelation 17. A woman being something with ideas. If it's good ideas, then you have a good woman. If it's bad ideas, you have a bad woman. Which is separate and distinct from the kingdoms that it's trying to control. If that kingdom does its job of serving the people, then it's called a head. But as soon as that kingdom adopts the woman's ideas and starts serving the woman, the bad woman, then it's called a beast in Revelation 17. The distinction between a good woman and a bad woman is how they use the power they have at their disposal. Is it to serve themselves or to serve the people? This story about serving themselves is the story about the abuse of power. Which should be familiar to us because we've done, I'm pretty sure, into the thousands of studies about patriarchy. Which is based on this abuse of power. And so, to start our discussion about the sixth and seventh kingdom, I wanted to prime us to get us ready to think about two parallel concepts. The throne becoming more powerful and fornication with the woman, called the sins of Babylon. Which is different to the throne becoming more powerful. That's a different story. And then with 30 seconds of my summary, I tried demonstrating that we can see a good woman on the sixth kingdom by design. The way that kingdom was created was with enough restraints to the power that that kingdom has that bad women don't find it attractive. And where we need to begin in the next study is determining if it's true that the sixth kingdom is born a lamb and it dies a lamb. So we can close with a word of prayer. Dear God, I personally appreciate that as we grow as a people, and develop our understanding of the great controversy, at least for me, it gets complicated. And so I ask that you may help us make sense of juggling many ideas. I pray that you may be with the translators and myself and everyone listening, that as we spend the morning together, we may not get tired. I praise you and thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.